Prologue. The earth remembers, the earth remembers. It remembers every seed planted, every drop of sweat, every whispered promise made between gardener and soil. It remembers the names of the flowers, the depth of the roots, the seasons of patience. And when something sacred is torn from it violently, carelessly, the earth does not forget. I learned this truth in the most painful way, while I stood at my father's graveside, wearing a black suit 2 sizes too big and holding a single white rose. A woman with a clipboard and a smug smile ordered a bulldozer to rip up my garden. She didn't call, she didn't write, she didn't knock. She just came, and when I returned home 3 days later, all that remained was a pile of uprooted lavender, crushed heirloom tomatoes, and a yellow legal notice taped to my front door that read, "Compliance. Achieved HOA notice number 7342. I stood there, frozen, staring at the destruction. The soil was churned, the stone path I'd laid by hand was shattered. The old wooden trellis hand-carved by my grandfather was snapped in half and tossed like kindling, and taped to the door. Fluttering in the breeze like a sick joke was a printed label, "Compliance achieved." As if my grief, my labor, my love, none of it mattered, as if I were just another rule to be enforced. But what that woman didn't know, what Karen Whitmore, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, did not know, was that I had been keeping records, not just records. I had evidence, and I was about to make sure the earth got justice. My name is Elias Hartwell, and this is the story of how a garden became a warrant, how the truth, like a dandelion pushing through concrete, refused to stay buried. Chapter 1. The first seed. I moved to Willow Creek Estates in the spring of 2018, seeking peace. After 20 years in corporate finance and list spreadsheets, fluorescent lights, and soul-crushing meetings, I quit. I sold my condo in the city, cashed out my 401k, and bought a modest 2-bedroom bungalow on a quiet cul-de-sac in the suburbs. The house wasn't much: peeling paint, creaky floors, a kitchen that smelled faintly of mildew. But the backyard was a blank canvas, overgrown with weeds. Yes, choked with brambles and dead ivy, but the soil was rich, dark, and full of potential. I knelt in it one Saturday morning, scooped a handful into my palm, and felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. I was 42 years old, newly divorced, and finally free. And I decided to grow a garden. Not just any garden, a heirloom garden, one that honored my family's roots. My grandmother had grown tomatoes in Kentucky that tasted like sunshine. My father, before the cancer took him, had taught me how to prune roses so they bloomed like fireworks. So I started small: raised beds built from reclaimed cedar, compost from local farms, drip irrigation. I planted Cherokee purple tomatoes, moon and stars, watermelons, Amish snap peas, and black beauty eggplants. I added lavender, rosemary, and echinacea for the pollinators. I even built a small herb spiral near the back fence. Every weekend, I worked. Every evening after work, I watered, weeded, and watched. And slowly, over months, the garden grew. It wasn't just food. It was therapy. It was memory. It was a living museum of everything I loved and had lost. Neighbors began to stop by. "Elias, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," said Mrs. Delgado from across the street, her eyes wide as she admired the climbing scarlet runner beans. "You should enter the county fair," said young Tommy Reynolds, who lived 2 doors down and would sneak over to steal cherry tomatoes when he thought I wasn't looking. I smiled. I took pictures. I kept a journal, the garden log, where I recorded planting dates, bloom cycles, weather patterns, and notes like, "First zucchini harvested today." Shared one with Mrs. Delgado. She cried, said it tasted like her childhood. By the second year, my garden had become a local landmark. People would slow down as they drove past. Kids would press their faces to car windows. Even the mailman would pause to say, "Looking good, Elias, looks like Eden back there." And I believed it. Until Karen Whitmore decided it was a violation. Chapter 2. The woman in the blazer. Whitmore arrived at my gate one Tuesday in June, wearing a navy blazer, white tennis skirt, and a pair of oversized sunglasses that made her look like a hawk assessing prey. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She just stood at the edge of my property, clipboard in hand, tapping a pen against her teeth. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, voice clipped, "we need to talk about your landscaping." I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked over, still holding a trowel. "Hi Karen, what's up?" She didn't smile. "You're in violation of Section 4.3 of the Willow Creek HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Specifically, the prohibition on non-conforming vegetation in front and side yards." I blinked. "You're talking about the garden?" "The vegetable garden," she corrected. "It's in your side yard, visible from the street. And it's untidy." "Untidy," I laughed. "It's a garden. It's supposed to be alive." "It's overgrown," she said, peering over her sunglasses, "and it attracts pests, rodents, insects. It's a liability." I gestured to the neatly labeled plant markers, the mulched beds, the hand-painted sign that said, "Be friendly, no pesticides." "This isn't overgrown. It's thriving." She flipped a page on her clipboard. Per HOA standards, all landscaping must be manicured, uniform, and aesthetically harmonious with the neighborhood. Your garden does not meet that standard. I stared at her. So you're telling me my heirloom tomatoes are against the rules? Precisely. And what do you suggest I do? Remove it. Replace it with drought-resistant grass or approved shrubbery. We recommend boxwood hedges. They're low maintenance. I crossed my arms. This garden cost me over $3,000. Not to mention 2 years of work. You want me to rip it out? For boxwoods, that's the rule, she said, smiling thinly, and as HOA president, I'm here to enforce it. Then she handed me a notice. Violation notice number 7342 property, 214 Sycamore Lane violation, non-compliant landscaping, vegetable garden in side yard deadline for compliance. 14 days fine, $100. Day after deadline I looked up. You're fining me for growing food. It's not about the food, she said. It's about community standards. We have a reputation to uphold. And with that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement like a metronome. Counting down to war. Chapter 3. The first shot fired. I didn't respond right away. I called a lawyer, a real estate attorney named Diane Chen, who specialized in HOA disputes. She reviewed the CC and RS and sighed. Technically, she said, they have a point. Section 4.3 does prohibit non-native or agricultural vegetation in visible areas. But what? But enforcement is discretionary. And agricultural is vague. You're not running a farm. You're growing a personal garden. There's precedent for homeowners winning similar cases, especially if they can prove aesthetic value, community benefit, or historical significance. So I have a chance. If you fight it, she said. But HOAs are powerful. They control everything from paint colors to trash cans. And Karen Whitmore, she's notorious. She's been president for 7 years. Removed 2 families over bird feeders. Fined someone $5,000 for painting their front door turquoise. I leaned back. This is insane. Welcome to suburbia, she said dryly. I decided to fight, gathered photos, testimonials from neighbors, even a letter from the local extension office praising my sustainable practices. I submitted a formal appeal to the HOA board. 3 weeks later, I got a response. Appeal denied. The board finds that the garden remains a violation of community standards. Compliance required by July 15th. Failure to comply will result in fines and possible lien placement. I was stunned. I emailed the board, called meetings, offered compromises, installing a fence, reducing the size, moving plants. All denied. And then, on July 16th, I received the first fine, $100. The next day, $200. Then, $300. By the end of the month, I owed $3,100. And Karen sent me a personal note. Compliance is not optional. The community must come before individual whims. I was furious, but I wasn't stupid. I started documenting everything. Chapter 4. The Watcher in the garden. I installed cameras. 4 of them, one facing the front gate, one on the side fence, one overlooking the garden, and one inside, pointed at the door. I set them to record 24 seconds, backed up to a cloud server. I also started a new journal. Karen file. In it, I recorded every interaction. June 12th, Karen walks past, stares at garden, mutters into phone. July 3rd, HOA board meeting. Refused my compromise. Karen smirked when I spoke. July 18th, received $3,100 fine. Called accountant, can't afford this. August 2nd, neighbor Mrs. Delgado says Karen threatened to fine her for excessive flower density. I wasn't just fighting for my garden, was fighting for something bigger. And then, in September, my father got sick. Really sick, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I packed a bag and flew to Louisville. He died 2 weeks later. The funeral was on a cold gray morning. Rain fell in slow, steady sheets. I stood at the head of the casket, reading a poem I'd written about gardens, about roots, about how love grows even in darkness. I stayed an extra day to help my sister sort through his things, and on the morning I was supposed to fly home, I got a text from Tommy Reynolds. Tommy, Elias, you need to come home. They destroyed your garden. Called him immediately. What? Who? The HOA? A truck came yesterday, bulldozed everything, even your trellis. Karen was there. She took pictures, taped a notice to your door. My blood turned to ice. I changed my flight, and when I pulled up to my house that afternoon, I saw it. Just dirt, mud, broken wood, a few sad stems sticking out like bones, and on the door, that yellow notice. Compliance achieved. HOA notice number 7342. I stood there, suitcase in hand, rain soaking my coat, and for the first time since my father's diagnosis, I cried, not just for the garden, but for the cruelty of it, for the timing, for the sheer malice. She knew I was burying my father, and she destroyed my sanctuary anyway. Chapter 5. The reckoning begins. I didn't confront her that day. I went inside, checked the cameras, and what I saw made my hands shake. Footage September 18th, 10:14 a.m. A white HOA van pulls up. Karen steps out, wearing gloves and a wide-brimmed hat. She walks around the garden, takes photos with her phone, then nods to a man. In work clothes, the man fires up a small bulldozer. Karen points at the garden. He starts digging. Lavender roots tear from the soil. Tomato vines snap. The stone path cracks under the treads. Karen watches, arms crossed, smiling. At one point, she pulls out a roll of yellow tape and writes something on it. Then she walks to my door and tapes up the notice. Compliance achieved. She stands back, admires it, then gets in the van and drives away. I played it again, and again, and again. Then I called Diane. She can't do this, I said, voice trembling. She destroyed private property. She violated the law, Diane said. HOAs can fine, but they can't destroy property without a court order. This is trespassing, vandalism, possibly theft. I sent her the footage. She called me back. An hour later, Elias, this is gold. We can sue, but we need more. Pattern of abuse. Evidence of misconduct. If we can show she's been abusing her power, we might not just win your case, we could take her down. I thought of the Karen file, the fines, the threats, the way she treated people, and then I remembered something. Last year, I'd helped organize a neighborhood cleanup day. We raised $8,000 for new playground equipment. The money was supposed to go to the HOA treasury, but the playground was never built. And when I asked Karen about it, she said, funds were I opened my laptop, and I started digging. Chapter 6. The paper trail. I requested the HOA's financial records. Under state law, homeowners have the right to inspect association finances. Karen denied my request. I filed a formal complaint with the state's Department of Real Estate. They ordered her to comply. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived. The HOA's bank statements, budget reports, vendor invoices. I spent the weekend going through them, and what I found was shocking. Over the past 5 years, Karen had charged the HOA $12,000 in landscaping consulting fees to a company called Greenscape, LLC, which was registered to her husband. Paid $7,500 to a security consultant who didn't exist. Withdrawn $3,000 in emergency repairs for a gate that had never been broken. Used HOA funds to pay for her daughter's college tuition, disguised as a scholarship grant. And the $8,000 from the cleanup fundraiser had been transferred to a personal account under the name Willow Creek Community Fund, which wasn't a real entity. I cross-referenced dates. The withdrawal happened 2 days after my father's funeral. The same day my garden was destroyed. I printed everything, highlighted the fraud, made copies, then I knocked on doors. Chapter 7. The Neighbors. Speak. I started with Mrs. Delgado. She fined me $200 for planting marigolds. The elderly woman said, hands trembling, said they were too bright. I couldn't afford it. I had to pull them up. Next was the Reynolds family. They fined us for excessive toy clutter in our yard, Mr. Reynolds said. Our kids left a few toys out. She made us pay $150 or face a lien. Then the Parkers, who'd been forced to remove a wind chime, Karen claimed, was noise pollution. And the New Gens, who were told their bamboo screen was visually disruptive and had to be cut down. One by one, people came forward. I recorded their stories. With consent. I also found 2 former HOA board members who'd been pushed out after questioning Karen's spending. She threatened to sue them for defamation. One said they backed down. I compiled it all. Photos, videos, financial records, witness statements, and I sent it to Diane. Then I did something else. I posted it online. All of it just a summary. A blog post titled, How the HOA President Destroyed My Garden and Stole $50,000. I shared it on Nextdoor, Facebook, Reddit. Within 48 hours, it went viral. Local news picked it up. Garden vandalism sparks. HOA scandal. Channel 7 News. HOA president accused of embezzlement. After garden destruction, Metro Times. Karen called me. Furious. You had no right. She screamed, you're damaging the community. You damaged it. I said, you stole from us. You destroyed my garden while I was burying my father. You don't get to hide behind community standards anymore. She hung up. The next day, the state launched an investigation. Chapter 8. The fall of Karen Whitmore. It didn't take long. The Department of Real Estate confirmed the embezzlement. The IRS opened a tax evasion probe. The district attorney filed criminal charges, theft, fraud, abuse of fiduciary duty. Karen was arrested at her home. News vans surrounded her house. She walked out in handcuffs, still wearing her blazer, head high, refusing to look at the cameras. But the internet remembered. Memes spread. Compliance achieved. Photoshopped onto crime scenes. Karen's Garden of Sin infographics. TikTok skits of her bulldozing vegetables while cackling. The HOA board resigned en masse. New elections were held. I didn't run, but I did speak at the town hall. I told my story, not just about the garden, but about grief, about power, about how small cruelties can grow into something monstrous if no one stands up. People listened, and when I finished, the room stood and applauded. Chapter 9. The Garden Reborn 6 months later. I started over, with the help of neighbors. I rebuilt the garden. We laid new beds, planted new seeds, bought Mrs. Delgado donated lavender cuttings. Tommy brought sunflower seeds. The Reynolds family helped rebuild the trellis, and in the center, we planted a new tree of dogwood, in memory of my father. At the base, I placed a small stone with an inscription, rooted in love, grown in truth. The fines were reversed. The HOA paid me $25,000 in damages. I donated half to a local food justice nonprofit. The other half went to legal fees and rebuilding. Karen pleaded guilty. She was sentenced to 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and ordered to pay $62,000 in restitution. No jail time. But her reputation, destroyed. She moved away. No one knows where, but her name still echoes in Willow Creek. Used as a warning. Chapter 10. The Legacy. Today, my garden is more than a garden. It's a community space. We host weekly harvest shares, cooking classes, kids gardening workshops. The HOA now has term limits, financial audits, a transparency committee, and every spring, we hold a Garden of Truth festival. People come from all over. To eat, to learn, to remember, and every year, I retell the story, not for revenge, but for remembrance, because gardens teach us patience. They teach us that life returns, that even when everything is torn up, the roots remain, and sometimes, justice grows slowly, like a tomato in summer. But when it comes, it's worth the wait. Epilogue. The letter last week. I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, Elias. I don't expect you to forgive me. I was wrong. About the garden, about the money, about everything. Power made me cruel. Fear made me desperate. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood, but I was just protecting my ego. I see now, what you built wasn't just a garden, it was a home, and I took that from you at your lowest moment. I'm sorry. KW. I read it once. Then, I walked outside, plucked a ripe Cherokee purple tomato from the vine, cut it open. The flesh was deep red, sweet, and warm from the sun. I took a bite, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace, because the earth remembers, and so do I.